Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming back to the podcast. My special guest today is Siobhan George from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yes.
Siobhan, good to have you on.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, I have been following your Facebook page for some time, your school Facebook page, that is, and I've been seeing a lot of performances and it seems like a very well oiled machine you got up there in Minnesota. And I wanted to have you come on and talk about your school and kind of, I guess we could start with the origins as far as, how you got started and how the school came about. So, let's start there.
Okay, so Rinkin Agree was founded in 2003 by Katie Stevens Spangler. Katie grew up in Milwaukee dancing for the Trinity Academy of Irish Dance and came up here for college. And she was teaching at a local school and for the entirety of her college career. And once she was done, she had this group of dancers who were like, please don't leave, please don't leave. And, at the time, she's 22, 23 years old and didn't really think she could run a school, but she did. So the doors opened. There was like 12 dancers who started at Rinkin. I was not one of them at the time, and very quickly the school kind of grew really big. There was only three schools in the Twin Cities at that time, and I think what people really were drawn to about Rinkin is that we don't compete. And we're strictly about putting on, great performances. And so Katie was going to get her TCRG, but then she was kind of like, why would I do that when the foundation of what I started is working? And there's a market for people who do want to Irish dance and learn that rigor and that technique, but they don't want to necessarily compete. So I joined the Rinkin Cree in 2010. Um, I was just performing, and I remember being at the Irish Fair of Minnesota, and Katie was like, do you think you want to be on the teaching staff? And I was like, yes. So I joined the teaching staff in 2011. Kind of from there, I went up in the ranks from instructor, assistant director, and I was kind of Katie's right-hand gal for many, many years. And unfortunately, we lost Katie in 2023 in January to cancer. And so then I was kind of the interim director from January until July. And Katie's husband at the time then signed the school over to myself and my husband. And we began taking over September 2023. So I've been the owner and director and since then.
Okay. So, there's a lot to unpack there. So, going,
There totally is.
yeah. So, going back into the part where you joined the school, did you have any previous Irish dancing anywhere else?
I did. So I was actually born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I started also at the Trinity Academy. And funny enough, one of my very first teachers was Bridget Jaskolski of the Glen Castle School, who happens to be Katie's cousin, funny
Wow.
enough. The other teacher was Amy Campbell Moran. My parents unfortunately divorced, so I moved away, but I knew I still wanted to keep dancing and began dancing at a local school here called Skolnadree. That was one of those three schools back in the early 2000. Um, then around 2004, 2003, 2004, there was a group of us who kind of just wanted more. We wanted to be more competitive. We wanted to be placing higher. Some of us had dreams of going to the Oireachtas for the first time and qualifying. And a certain family, they were looking for another teacher to come up to Minnesota. And tried many schools. You name it, we probably were like, please come to Minnesota. But that's obviously a huge commitment for a teacher. Um, we landed on Anna Moore. They were based in Chicago. It was Irish dance and music, Amy Campbell Moran, and her husband, Jackie Moran, who is a very famous bull run player and one of the best, if you ask me. Um, and she had a school here in Chicago and then had a group here. And then as the school grew, I was competing competitively at the Oireachtas, placing in the top 30 and loving it. Unfortunately, Amy was like, now that you have your TC to the person who owns the school now, she just decided it was a lot. She wanted to grow her family and just focus on the Chicago school. And I think that teacher kind of had a clear idea of what they wanted for their school. And unfortunately, I had a mother with mental illness, and I think that didn't really fit into the box of what they wanted their families to look like. So unfortunately, I got a letter from that was postmarked from nationals that year that was in Nashville. And it was like, we feel you are unhappy, so you should find another school. So at 14 years old, I was heartbroken. I felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest. Um, it was very hard. And, looking back, I think it kind of made me who I am because, and if anything, it gave me a greater sense of my love for Irish dance. Like, I could have just let it go. I could have gone into high school and played another sport, but I would go to the Irish Fair every year and I would cry watching the performances. And I was like, this isn't normal. Like, this means I should be back in dance. And it just so happened I watched Rankin and Crete. They were after my previous school. I've never seen them perform before, and I was totally blown away. It just looked, there was so much energy coming from that stage. You could feel it, and it just looked like everyone was truly dancing for like the love of the art form and like putting on an energetic performance for the audience. Like, you couldn't watch it and not smile. And I remember thinking, I got to go there.
And so that's how you ended up there. Did you talk
Yeah.
to the teacher after the performance or something?
I sent her an email, and I was just and it was kind of funny because at the time I was either 17 or 18, but we joked about this when she was still here about how she made me try out for her, and I was like, I got this. And she had never put someone directly in the top class before, and at the time there was only two advanced classes, so I was in the lower one, and I was like, I'm gonna prove it wrong to you, girl. I'm gonna get to that top class. And I did.
Well, and I've had that experience as running a school with students as well. Really one. I mean, there's like you were talking about. There usually in a school you don't have many who really want to prove themselves like that. Like if you're lucky as a teacher, you may have one or two.
Mhm.
So I can kind of relate in that sense. What do you think it was about you that made you feel like you had to prove something to that teacher?
I don't know. I think I've worked really hard my whole life at dance, and I've always been the one who is like striving to be on the top or working the hardest or back in the competition days, I was like, if there's five of us in this age group, I really want to be the top place. I don't care what place that is. I just want to be the top. Um, and I think too that you know, sh the school was so inspiring because there were so many dancers in there that didn't necessarily come from a competitive background. And it was, in a way, it was humbling, right? It was like, oh, I used to compete. I should be in the top class. But there's all these incredible dancers who didn't necessarily have that background. And so it's like I was trying to form myself as a dancer into what they were exuding too. So it was fun. It was like a challenge. It was like, okay, I'm getting back into Irish dance for the first time in a long time. And now I have a goal because when I was competing, when I was younger, I was in the top class. So there's of course qualifying for nationals or worlds or placing higher than you did last year, but it wasn't the same goal, I guess.
Hmm. So was it a hard transition from a competitive school to a non-competitive school, which had a completely different emphasis in on dancing?
To be honest, for like the first season or two, it was really challenging. Mostly because they use like a different language, I say. You know, in competitive schools, it's treble bang, and then Katie got like 1-2 bang
Hmm.
instead. And so it was kind of like learning this whole new language and all their new steps and kind of adjusting. And they had done figure choreographies, which I never got to do as a competitive dancer. I was strictly a solo dancer, so never did teams. So like learning that side of Irish dance too was also really, really cool and really challenging. And it inspired me to like want to learn more about the choreography side of Irish dance.
Okay. So at what point did you decide that it was? I know you talked about the transition starting to help from being a student to now helping this school, and then unfortunately with her demise, you now run the school. But before that happened, were there thoughts in your own mind of, I wouldn't mind continuing on this teacher track and maybe taking more of a role in the school?
Mhm.
Were you thinking about that before uh, you were sort of handed the keys, as it were?
I think naturally I kind of have a nurturing vibe to myself, or like the younger kids are always kind of drawn to me because in the studio I have like an energetic and a little bit goofy personality. So I feel like the younger dancers were always sort of drawn to me. So like there was this natural connection between myself and younger dancers. And so then it kind of created this path to teaching. I loved Irish dance. Yeah, I'm kind of finding it for the second time in my life. And so that was exciting. And then this could be like another avenue for me to explore my love for Irish dance. I got to try out teaching, if you will, at our summer dance camp, and I loved it. And I just loved being able to share my passion for Irish dance with my students, while also now it's not all about your goals or what you can achieve. It's about what you can help your students achieve. And like watching them perform or perfect something or totally go out there and crush it, as we say, like that was like a whole new high, if you will, for Irish dance. It was like, oh, I need more of this.
So, Siobhan, at what age was it that you came back, and then also what age was it when you took over the school?
Yeah, so I started dancing again at Rinkin when I was 19 years old. I transitioned to teaching then around the 2021 age, and then I took over Rinkin when I was 33.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
No, 32, 32,
32.
32.
Do you think if that opportunity had come sooner, say 5 or 6, 7 years sooner, would you have been ready for it then, or do you think that the age you took it over was the right age?
I think taking over and running a school that's the magnitude of Rinkin with over 200 families, I truly don't think, yeah, I don't think I would be ready before then. I mean, part of me with like natural fear didn't even think I was ready at the time, but it's I think you learn a lot in your 20s, as everyone knows, and you get a lot of life experience. And I got engaged and married and had my first kid. And I think that was a lot of personal growth and development with me, with like the highs and lows of life. So while I would love to be optimistic and fearless and say, yes, I could have taken it over whenever, I truly think me taking over running the school kind of came in a time of my life where I was ready.
Hmm. Okay. Was it hard to let go, going back a little bit, was it hard to let go of the competitive aspect of Irish dancing? Because before you joined the school, Rankin Decree, like you said, you'd been at other schools where you could compete, and those were the goals. As a former competitor myself, and probably many people listening to this who have done competitions, it's hard to let that go. Was it hard for
It
you to let
totally
that go?
is.
Yeah.
I at first when I started dancing again, I thought, well, maybe I could be the TC for the school. Like I could take that on for Katie as she's growing her family. And I thought about it, but then I kind of just learned to love what we have and find inspiration from all the competition schools out there. With social media nowadays, it's like you can watch all these incredible dancers that you wouldn't necessarily be able to have access to back when I was competing. And so it's just like seeing what other dancers are doing, or like Fesh TV, Cormic's Fesh TV. It's like I can watch the World Championships right from my living room. And so I feel like I'm getting an aspect of that competition piece of it, and the inspiring and seeing these incredible dancers without having to be in the thick of it, if you will.
Okay. And so you're not currently affiliated with any organization, are you?
No, just
Okay.
myself.
Okay. Has that thought ever crossed your mind?
Um, I I don't think so. I think I've gotten enough feedback from our families where they just say we love what Rink and Cree is at its core, and we have either loved that you don't compete or found you because you don't compete. And I think I've just learned to love and appreciate that and being that special place for people looking to Irish dance without the competition aspect.
Hmm. I can relate to that in the sense that I always thought I was going to be a really competitive teacher because I loved competition when I did it. I did as many of them as I possibly could, and my path did not go that way at all. No,
Mhm.
we've done some competitions along the way, but nothing like I thought I was going to be doing. And the same thing, for whatever reason, I most of the students I've attracted, the families I've attracted, really don't care. I mean, if they
Mhm.
do a couple, okay, fine, it's great for experience, but I don't draw the diehard competitors I thought I might.
Yeah. And
Do
I
you?
think,
No, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I think when I was younger too, when I began teaching at Rankin and Agree, part of me wanted to push that fierceness and
Hmm.
that, oh, it has to be perfect. And I think over time and through lots and lots of errors, you kind of learn you have to meet these kids where they're at and love and appreciate that, hey, they're showing up to Irish dance class and it's your job to meet them at where they can be and push them to be their best and not your perception of the best.
Hmm. Was it hard for you to make that change to put that competitive side to the side a little bit and adjust your style to accommodate the dancers?
Oh, totally. Totally. I mean, I think I've I've been beaten up enough times to learn to do better through, feedback from parents or when you lose dance. It's always hard when you lose a dancer, but like when they go out and they don't feel good, like that's a really good time for you to reflect on yourself and like your teaching. And I think from that and then after losing Katie, it's a kind of instant reminder of like what's important, like what really matters, and like what can I be for these kids in their life? Because everyone's got everything going on in their life, and I want to be a safe place for these kids at the studio.
Hmm. Okay. Was it hard taking over a school that's already been established? Did you? Was there any, I guess, thoughts of, okay, do I have to do this exactly the way Katie did it, or is it okay? I'm going to respect what she did, honor what she set up, but this, I'm me. I have my own personality. I'm going to interpret it my way and have my own style.
Definitely the latter. I think one thing we've been really focusing on as a school is legacy and community. Because we're a non-competition school, we really focus on performing for the community. Our school averages over 100 shows a year,
Wow.
which is a lot. And so I wanted to keep the core of who we were, but I knew that there were changes, frankly, for my own sanity taking over a school of this size that I had to make. God love Katie, but that girl did not like technology. Um, and she was a very pen and paper gal, and I am not. When you take over something like that, it can be very overwhelming and stressful, but then taking it over with like so much grief of losing your best friend, you could just sink so easily. So I sort of found ways to slowly implement new changes to make it my own, to make it easier on myself and our families. And I found that it's made the general operations a lot easier. And I think families are easier too, or happier with these changes. So, like, I always come back to what would Katie do? I should make a bracelet. And kind of remember who we are and what got Rankin and Cree here. But like Katie and I always used to talk about what can we do to be better? What can we do to be bigger? How can we make changes from what we've learned that didn't work? How can we improve on what did work? So it's definitely keeping the core of Rankin and Cree, but letting the tree grow some new
Hmm.
branches.
So, what did you find, whether it was when you were talking to her when she was still here, and even after? What do you find worked and what didn't work? What needed to be changed?
I think what worked is our community, and remembering to give back. I think, it is an Irish dance school and there's this art form, but at the end of the day, it's also a business. Um, and I think it could be very easy to be very rigorous and hard when it comes to money, but there's some families who struggle. And one thing I learned from Katie is to like help people. Like if there's a kid who wants to dance, let them dance and figure out the finances on the back end. Like I would never want something like money for business hold someone back from dancing, or like being able to afford a costume. Like, let's come up with creative ways to help as many families dance as possible. Where she could use some improvement, she'd always joke. I mean, when we were talking about technical stuff for our annual From the Stage to Your Heart performance, we'd say things like JPEG, and she'd go, "Whoa, nope, don't know what that is." And we would joke with her. So we've implemented things because we have so many shows, like a Sign Up Genius, where everyone has access to every show that is available, both teachers, staff, and frankly, myself, keeping it in one place. We switched to Dance Studio Pro, which is like an online registration account. Before, it was all paper. So like it was tracking down all these papers and these forms. And I was like, there's no way. I live in a story and a half house. I physically don't have room for this and a 2-year-old. Um, so those were the technical changes that I think have been really great. One of the bigger things was it was a change to our brand. At the time, Katie was sick. We had created a brand new team dress with Prime Dress Designs.
Hmm.
Love
Oh yeah.
that. And they sort of, and that is something we created together before she passed away. Unfortunately, she didn't even get to see those
Hmm.
dresses debut, which was heartbreaking. But then they kind of, us making that together was so special to me that it kind of became our new logo. Like, designs that were in the dresses became our new logo, because I didn't want to necessarily like just, not use something that Katie had been using for 20 years, but I wanted to make it my own while also respecting what it was. And I think it was just so special that we designed that together. And I love it. It's like
Hmm.
every time I see it, it's like a memory of Katie, but also like a vision of the future.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, let's go into these performances that you do. You said you have over 100 shows a year.
Oh,
So I'm just taking it from that stat alone that there's a lot of opportunities. Is there a lot of, is there a big Irish culture in that part of Minnesota and they're always
huge.
inviting you out?
Yeah, huge. I sometimes I say there's too many dance schools, but I think that's the business side of me
Right.
talking. But yeah, there's a huge Irish culture in St. Paul, and now it's kind of coming to Minneapolis a little bit. There's the St. Paul Parade. We have a relationship with the St. Pat's Association. We've had relationships with the Irish Fair of Minnesota and the Irish Arts Minnesota, all, for all 20 years. And I think just through our reputation and relationships and connections with families, it just is kind of this thing like a river. It just kind of goes all these different directions. And, you get new shows every year, but then there's also people who call back every year. So there's like these consistent ones. So we have 3 big shows that we invite our whole school to, and then we have community shows. So you can find us in a parade or a private party. We've danced for weddings or senior living homes. Breweries are a parent favorite, of course. And we're dancing at the Mall of America on St. Patrick's Day weekend, which is really cool. Like, so we're always trying to find new opportunities that are really cool for our families. Um, Prior to Katie passing away, we were doing the pre-show for the Timberwolves, and that was one of the things where I was like, I kind of want to push for halftime. Like, dancing at the Timberwolves is really cool, but it's not really fun when no one's watching.
Right.
And I was like scared to ask. And thankfully enough, we got it last year and we're doing it again this year. So it's just finding new ways to do what we do and do it even better.
Hmm. How many schools are in your general vicinity? Let's say within an hour drive of where you now sit.
Okay, like roughly 15. I haven't counted
15
in
or 50?
15, 1 5.
15. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I haven't counted in a while, but I mean, there's in St. Paul alone, I think there's 3 or 4. Um, Minneapolis, there's 1 or 2. And then, you get out to like Wayzata or farther out, there's even more.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
There's 4 here in Houston, and almost the third largest city in America. There's not very many. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at the sheer amount of people, I mean, we've 7, almost 8 million people in the metropolitan area, not Houston proper. And sometimes I think, well, I don't want, kind of like you said earlier, from the business end, you don't want anyone coming near you or anything like that. But at the same time, honestly, none of us have huge schools. I mean, 200 families, you could put, like what you were saying earlier, all four of us, like we would have, we'd have a lot of change left if we put 200 in there. None of us just have very big schools. It just, for whatever reason, it just hasn't caught on here like it has in even some smaller communities compared to our size. With your shows, are you producing your own shows, or are you reactive to requests? Like someone calls you and says, "We have a performance, we're doing all the advertising and have the audience. We want you to be our guest," or are you doing your own stuff?
A little bit of both.
Both.
The one relationship we actually have, she's a dance mom now at Rankin and Cree, but it's Katie McMahon, who was the original singer in Riverdance.
Mm-hmm.
So she puts on her annual Celtic show, and so she produces, advertises, does the whole thing, and then invites us in and tells us what to do. But in the other senses for our annual From the Stage to Your Heart performance, Irish Fair, and St. Patrick's Day all school shows, it's choreographed by myself and the staff. And then, obviously, we're not bringing 200 dancers to a senior living home. That seems like a health code violation. It's just like smaller dances, nothing huge. It's kind of repetitive, the same thing. But for our bigger shows, we're trying to change every season because we don't want the same dances. We don't want
Right.
to get bored.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever run into that issue where you fear losing dancers to competitive schools, because you have a very healthy school size? I mean, as far as I can relate to in this area and other
Yeah.
areas I know, especially when you're surrounded by a lot of competitive schools. How do you retain those dancers and not, I guess, fear losing those dancers to more competitive schools?
I think with my background, that was definitely a fear I used to have.
Mm-hmm.
And, we'd lose a few a year and we'd learn they'd go competitive. But what I found more recently, I'd say within the past maybe 3 to 5 years, it's been the opposite. It's
Mm-hmm.
been people who try a competitive school, they do a fesh or two, and they're just like, whoa, this is too much. I'm not looking for that much. And I think maybe COVID might have something to do with that, where people don't want as much rigor or as much of a commitment, and they're just looking for something more fun. So yeah, it was definitely a natural fear, and now it's kind of reversed.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. We've never really lost many to competitive schools, a couple here and there, but I think there may have been other reasons, like maybe relocation that was
Mhm.
factored in as well, and other things. But conversations I have with teachers and then listening to other people who do podcasts in Irish dancing, there's a there is a trend to ask the question, do we do too many competitions? Is Irish dancing too focused on competition? How do we walk that back and have a more well-rounded approach to Irish dancing? Have we missed out on the competitive boat? Most schools do some sort of little competition performance here and there, but having that more than just the occasional let's go to the old folks home and perform, which are very important performances I think for kids, but that's always been kind of an aside. Now it
Mhm.
seems like there's this more and more discussion of, let's maybe we need to develop more of a performance aspect, maybe alongside with the competition here and there, because I think competition has its place. But
Yep.
I think that narrative's changing, and I think it's a very good thing.
hmm I think that was one of the things Katie kind of was considering even back in the early 2000s, is because, we don't have competitions, or, you can do nursing homes or restaurants or whatever. So, and she created, we call it From the Stage to Your Heart. It's our annual show that we do either February or March. And now it's grown so big. I mean, we sold over 1,100 tickets to that show, which was fabulous. Yeah. We have two live bands, all of our dancers performing. It's kind of, got the lights and the whole theater experience. So I think us having that is really great for our school because it's something to look forward to, but it's going to be different every year versus, the stuff you're doing at the nursing homes is going to be the same every year. It's still wonderful and it's still a great experience and an important part of giving back to the community, but it's not like our big show, which is something really special in our school.
What are some of the rigors running a very active and considerably large dance school? Obviously, you talked earlier about having people on staff. Surely you can't do this by yourself, but talk about the logistics. How do you make it all work?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the day-to-day gal. I'm fortunate enough to have a staff of 13 young women. Some are, high school age, college age, some in their mid to late 20s. And the late 20s have been dedicated to Rink and Degree for so long, and like I couldn't do it without them. Finding ways to promote the staff and like empower them that they can be a huge part of Rink and Degree if they want to. So three of my staff members I kind of updated to directors, and they're directors of the three programs. That's definitely helped. Relying on my husband, he's also owns Rankin and Cree, and he knows nothing about Irish dance other than the jig he did at our wedding. But he comes from an accounting and business background, which has been really great to lean on him for that side of things. I'm definitely more the glitz and the glam, the choreography, the artistic form, and he's more of the business part. So leaning on him for that has been really helpful, or just challenging situations, or talking through, oh, this parent is upset about this, and I'm more hot tempered where he kind of comes in cool and lets it warm up slowly. So being able to talk with someone I trust and love who's different than me has been a really great help for me um, during, this whole transition and taking over a school and learning all the things that come with owning a business, which is can be overwhelming.
You're right about that, and I think it's important if you have the opportunity to have someone that's to do this with you, whether it's a spouse or maybe just someone that comes up through the ranks like you came up through the ranks under Katie. Just kind of having that sort of
Mhm.
point counterpoint that you could bounce ideas off of, because a lot of times some of us
Yeah,
go through things by ourselves and for maybe some or all of our teaching career, and I tell you it's really valuable to have someone to bounce things off of and someone that you can
totally.
work hand in hand with.
Yeah. And I've through kind of the Irish Fair of Minnesota and the Irish community, I've built a really great relationship with the Hudson Academy of Irish Dance. They're in Minnesota too. They are a competitive school, so it's kind of fun to be able to like hear about their competition stuff, and they hear about mine, and we're really supportive of our schools. And they have a different business model than we do, but I think our core values are very similar. So to like play off ideas of each other who like actually understands Irish dance, that's been a really positive and impactful relationship in my life, especially taking over Rink and a Cree as well.
Hmm. Do you think that there is too much emphasis put on uh, certifications, organizational affiliation? Because people like you and I are certainly in the minority. Okay,
We
independent. We don't
are,
belong to
yeah.
anybody. Even though we may have had experiences with other groups, we're not currently in one. Um, that can be a very lonely journey from time to time, and sometimes you're even in conversations amongst other teachers. It's easy to get kind of put over here in the non-qualified camp. I don't think they
Yeah.
do it even on. I don't think that's done on purpose, but and it seems like our European and Irish counterparts use the word qualified a lot, where over here we would say certified. And I think there's a
Right.
different connotation.
Yeah.
Certification to me implies you pass the test and you join an organization,
Hmm.
like passing a bar exam for a lawyer. Doesn't mean that if you don't pass the bar, you're not a lawyer. It's just a little extra thing that you did that may help you, may not. Qualified, on the other hand, I think to me can turn very negative in the sense that, well, you're not qualified to do anything. I mean, that seems different than certification.
Yeah. Over the years, I've definitely felt that where you just say performance based or non-competitive, and there are definitely people within the Irish dance community or Irish community who may look down on that. One time we had a dancer do our camp, and they came from another school, and they're like, "Yeah, that teacher said that you guys don't teach real Irish dance." And
Right.
oh, I was like, "Well, I don't. I'm going to teach you the jig, and I think that's probably the most basic." popular, famous dance in Irish culture you could know. So I think I do teach real Irish dance. Yeah, and there's definitely this, oh, you don't compete, so you don't this, or feeling like lesser than. And I just have kind of put that to the side and been like, no, I don't feel that at all because look what Rinkin and Cree is. And look at this whole community of people who support me and the staff and Katie who truly don't believe that. So I'm trying to find the positive in the naysayers comments, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was really interesting. I had worked with a couple of friends over the years, like a lot of people do from time to time. You know, someone that's in an organization, and you kind of work with them as a partnership, and your dancers can join into the competitions if they want to do that under their
Sure.
name, of course. It may be just in name only, but it's still there. And we did that off and on a couple of times because I was getting a lot of feedback from some dancers saying, "Hey, I want to try that opportunity." We didn't
Sure.
do very many on our own, so I said, "Okay, we'll work something out." So they did, and did just fine. In fact, would think it surprised some people how well they did, and I thought just proves 100% that the certification doesn't matter.
Yeah.
you know,
I've totally joked about doing the same. Like, I have one extremely gifted dancer. I mean,
Mhm.
she's got the muscle, she's a gymnast,
Yeah,
and she's got the natural knack for Irish dance. It's basically like the holy grail of a dancer. And I've joked with my friends at the competition school. I'm like, I would love to see what my pony could do in that race. And I think I'd be surprised, but then I don't want to lose her.
yeah, well, I went through that same experience. You paint a very similar description, and that dancer won a back-to-back prelim 2 days in a row and moved into opens, and it was like, hmm, yeah, okay.
Which is it's so great for
I
that
was so
dancer
proud of
too,
her.
right?
Yeah,
But it's also like kind of like a pat on the back for yourself. Like, okay, I can train really technical and beautiful dancers, and I don't have to have this
right.
thing.
Yeah, it just proves to me that we put too much into 4 letters, or in
Yep.
some organizations 5 letters. Um,
Yeah.
Nothing against that. I mean, I've gone that path, and I've taken all those grades and took the exams and all that kind of stuff. And I think that it's a tool. It's you have a tool shed and you put certain tools in your tool shed. It allows you to do certain things depending on your needs. And if you need to compete in that arena and that arena stipulates that you have that certification, absolutely go for it. But
Hmm.
I guess what I want in these interviews is to show people that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
Find your path, you know.
Even
Yeah.
find your path at like no matter what that age is. I mean, one thing I've been super proud of since taking over the school is growing the adult program.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people think I can't or I'll look silly but we've gone from maybe like 17 and now we're at 31 adult dancers. And I'm
Good.
just we got to split them because they're so big, and some people have been here since the very beginning of Rankin and Cree. And it's just so awesome to see people taking this initiative for their life and like starting something new. I love it.
Mm-hmm. How are collaborations or potential collaborations with other schools in your area for performances?
For performances, possibly. I do know that with my friends at the Hudson School, like I could send them a dancer if I had one who wanted to compete. They've invited us to perform with them, and we want to do vice versa at some point. I think it's open, but I think so much of the scene here in the Twin Cities is quite competitive, and people are a little reserved and very guarded for whatever reason. It may be past relationships with people or just, stay away from my my house. So we kind of just stay in our own lane. I've tried to kind of break down that wall a little, like,
Mm-hmm.
when you're seeing other schools and try and say hi to everyone. I mean, we all know who we are,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of if we've met, and just trying to stay positive and say hello to everyone, even if, it's not reciprocated. So
Yeah.
maybe down the road, but right now it's not a thing.
Right. Do you think it's strange though in 2025, especially with technology and all the COVID stuff, and so many of us have learned about each other and connected with you and talked to people who maybe we wouldn't otherwise talk to in the Irish dance world. I think it's strange that those walls still exist, and there's that fear that if I talk to this teacher, or if we go and commiserate at a performance or at a competition, if you're competitive, that we might get strange looks. I mean, I just think
Yeah,
that's a little odd in 2025.
I think it's definitely a lot. Um, Especially because we're in such a niche market. Like we teach Irish dance, guys. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is a very unique, special thing. And why not just embrace people for what they are? I mean, even though we're all teaching Irish dance, we all have very different things to offer. I mean, people who are at my school wouldn't go to another school because of their culture or what they're about. And so I think just trying to break down those walls or, make the relationships a little more positive is really important. It's just, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm. How do you keep from getting burned out? Because you're very busy, you have a lot going on, you have a lot of people you're responsible for, even though you do have staff that, and I know that helps, but ultimately it rests on your shoulders. How do you keep the balance?
I'm thankful enough to where my outside career is also sort of give what you give to it. It's in real estate, so it's not like I'm going to the office every day, which definitely helps. And I think part of the reason my burnout doesn't feel as strong as if I were doing a 9 to 5 is that like I truly love and believe in Rink and Cree, and like it's something I'm super passionate about. And like growing it gives me so much energy that I don't necessarily feel that burnout. And in times when I do that or feel overwhelmed or burnout or stress, I kind of, say, hey, whoa, you've been working a lot today. It's totally fine for you to go and get a little massage or go and have lunch. And then the work will be there when you get back, and just giving yourself at least some sort of little reprieve and then getting back to it. I'm just so lucky that I don't necessarily feel that as often as I may back in corporate world, because this is what I love to do and it's what I've wanted to do since I was a little girl. So
Okay,
it's like
very
my
good.
second baby.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Um, Siobhan, what's your advice to any up and coming person that's not necessarily a teacher yet, or maybe they've had, like you, they in your past you had some experience assisting and co-teaching in a group, as it were, but they're thinking maybe I'm coming out of this, I guess maybe a slump in their life. Maybe they did Irish dancing when they're younger, and like we've talked about before, and they're thinking about there's something that's pulling me back. There's something about this that keeps beckoning me to at least look into it again.
Mhm.
Any words of encouragement for them?
Yeah, I would say go for it. I think what I've learned through grief and sadness and loss is that life it really is. I mean, it's cliche, but life is too short. So, like, why not try something? And, if you hate it, then at least you know you tried and you're not living your life with regret or wonder or what if I did do this? Like, take the leap and do something, because if inside your heart is telling me, hey, I want to do this again, it's telling you for a reason and you got to follow it.
Mm-hmm. Tips on partnering with other people. What would you say if someone wants to collaborate with another person? Maybe they don't have experience with this person, but they, like you looked up when you wanted to get back into Irish dancing, you looked up to see who was around, and you saw that performance, and you contacted Katie, but you didn't know her beforehand. You had at least no professional experience with her. What would be some of your suggestions with working with someone you don't know? Maybe you're wanting to get involved with their school in some way.
One thing I talk about like with my staff is giving people the benefit of the doubt. Come in with an open heart. I think, everyone is experiencing their life in their own way with trials and tribulations. And I think going into relationships, new or old, or difficult situations, new or old, with an open heart and like the benefit of the doubt is it's very like awakening and like empowering, because you're not going into it with any preconceived notions or negative feelings or doubt. Going into it just raw and open, you're going to get a lot more back than if you come into it guarded and not open to it.
Hmm. Okay, very good. And looking out 5 years, where would you like to see Rankin Decree?
Oh boy. I would love, love, love to have our own studio, our own space. We've been in the same space for 22 years and it's lovely. And I am so thankful for the staff we work with at Concordia University. But I think a huge goal, especially with us turning 25 in the next 5 years, would be our own space so we can display our beautiful photography and show our history. Um, and just keeping the doors open for anybody who wants to dance. You don't have to be female. You don't have to be a girl to dance, which I hate that notion. That's a whole other conversation.
Hmm.
You don't have to be a perfectly turned out or super, technical dancer to dance. Like anybody can Irish dance, and I want to be the place that opens the doors for people to come in and feel that joy. So studio and keeping the joy going.
Okay. And business advice for up and coming studio owners, whether you're wanting to start or you've already started and you're really small and you're trying to work your way up. What are some tips you have for people as far as treating the business as a business?
Yeah, I mean, find ways or systems and programs that make your life easier. Even if that's taking a month or two to like learn a program or a software that makes your life easier, you could be spending that time finding other opportunities for your dancers or growing your business or, coming up with new ideas. So find things that make your life easier that you don't necessarily have to be, you know, maintaining all yourself. Make it
Right.
easier on yourself so you can do other things that bring you joy.
Okay. So without giving away personal business strategies, because everyone has their own marketing and what works in their community, and I know that's very private for all of us. We don't want to give away too much, but generically speaking, what seems to work for you as far as getting new people coming to the door of any age?
Yeah, I think one thing I've tried to focus on, because I think so much of this generation now, especially post COVID, is like very online. Um, I've focused a lot on professional photography, like really showcasing who we are. And I think to showcase how I feel about Rinkin and Cree, it needs to be done in like a professional, beautiful manner.
Right.
So we've worked with some really great photographers to get that photography. And uh, you know, how do I don't know. I think just showcasing yourself for like who you are is really important. I think I've learned I definitely used to be a person who would come from the place of like no and guarded. And I've learned a lot, especially since losing Katie, is like come from a place of yes. Like there is a way to get things done and like open yourself to new opportunities. Like maybe this show's a little difficult, but like what could be if you do this show? Or hey, maybe we should go outside of the box and reach out to libraries or local schools and like get into those markets. And if they say no, they say no. But like at least you put yourself out there as like, yes, I'm willing to do this. Yes, I'm willing to try this to make it a bigger and better place for everyone.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Siobhan, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all that insight and your
Yeah.
history and how the school has grown. And it looks like you've got a fantastic program there, and I wish you all the best
Thank
in the
you.
future.
Thank you so much for having me.